Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a good day so far here at GDCamp2020. I'm Des Gale, and I am the production manager at Fellow Traveller, and I'm very happy to be joined today by Lauren Hunter and Chris Wulf. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about exploring publishing. We've got a whole bunch of questions. Please feel free to add more questions to the online chat thing, and we'll just literally just go around and try and answer as many as possible. I will leave everyone to introduce themselves, and I will start with Lauren.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, my name is Lauren. I work at Square Enix as part of the Collective, which is essentially Square's indie publishing arm. And what we do at Collective is we aim to leverage the resources of Square Enix in helping indie studios further their reach in the market, kind of like get in front of more players, but, also arm them with lots of resources that they might not be able to access themselves as well. So that's kind of what I do.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Wulf. I'm the publishing director at our little publishing development hybrid called Those Awesome Guys, our company out of Bucharest, Romania. Started as a developer, then transitioned into this hybrid world. And these days we're very much focused on titles that are sort of like premium games as a service. So one-time launch, one-time payment, but still building sort of like a whole little franchise around the initial idea of a game.
Awesome, cool. And I guess a little bit more about Fellow Traveller. We're an indie label that is based in Australia, but quite a few of us work remotely, which obviously, given the current state of the world, is working quite well. And we focus on narrative games and specifically unusual stories. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but like we'll know when we see it. Cool. Okay. Well, that's that done. I guess my first question is just generally, like, how are the pair of you doing? Like,
considering the circumstances, I think pretty good. Yeah, it's been an interesting year, right?
Definitely. I feel like possibly all three of us are really fortunate to work in fields where working remotely and working kind of like isolated isn't actually a downside at all, because we often work with teams and people in studios from all over the world. So if anything, it's probably a benefit to those studios in different time zones, because it means I've got no excuse to not be on that like really early Australia call or that like mega late West Coast call, It's just like all the time. I'm available, I guess. I'm in the same room as my computer, so...
Yeah, I hear that.
How about you, Des? How have you been doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. It's a great point, Lauren, because so obviously team meetings are they're like early morning or like super late for me, because so we've got team members in the States as well. So like in Europe, yeah, we've got the short straw. So it's always it's a bad time of day for us. But but developers as well is cool. Like, so I would say, yeah, you've got one East Coast, one West Coast, and the majority of Europe, which is awesome. But we just signed one team in Japan, so you're just like,
oh dear, you're really trying to make it difficult for yourself, aren't you?
Exactly.
What time zone don't we have? Check.
just power napping in between time zones. Got 2 hours here, 2 hours there.
Yeah, you don't get like 8 hours sleep. You get like 2 hours between like each different call all throughout the 24-hour day.
That's it, right? Yeah, get those power naps in. I might have to start putting this in our like due diligence process. Like, oh, where in the world are they? Yeah. But yeah. Cool. And I guess another warm-up question. What games are you playing at the moment?
I don't know whether I should be ashamed to admit this, but I'm not ashamed. As I've been described as a recovering weeaboo, so I'm like really enjoying Genshin Impact at the moment. Nice. Just nonstop being playing that. I get quite addicted to games like that, so that's all I've played in the last 2 weeks, to be honest.
It's a good choice. No one has to be ashamed of that. I think I just picked up, I'm so happy about it, my PS5 the other day. So it's been all like bug snacks, but also jumping back into the PS4 titles that are now playable. I'm so close to finishing Telltale's The Walking Dead, which I started like the whole franchise about 6 years ago or so.
Wow.
So Almost at the finish line. I
Catching
think like
up.
one more season. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What have you been playing?
So I've got another kind of like dirty pleasure, I guess. I've been playing a lot of Elite Squad on my phone. Yeah, it's I don't want to be rude, but like it's quite a simple game. But yeah, they've just really got me with that core loop. And, like, you know, build your soldiers up, get more weapons, and like go and do more fights, get more levels. You go, yeah, okay, cool. It's literally 10, 15 minutes a day, and like I think about it as soon as I get up. It's a nice tight loop. And the other one I've been playing is Carto on the Switch with my kids.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's it's a shame because I don't really like watching game trailers because I don't like games being like spoiled. I just want to go in and see what's going on. And unfortunately, it's a little bit too slow for my kids because they're like 4 and 5. So they love it when you find like new bits of map, but like when you're trying to work out where to put it and stuff, they're just like, "Oh, come on, Dad, hurry up, go back and start running around again." But yeah, it's only about an hour in, and yeah, it's lovely so far. So I'm really looking forward to finishing it off. But
That's nice co-op game.
Yeah, but there's too many games.
You should introduce them to something that's even slower, just to make Carter more approachable. Like, just put them in front of the Witness for a day, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool, Carter. That's exactly what you
mean." Yeah. Oh man. I think child services like her person yeah. Cool. Okay. Sorry, folks. We should probably get into the important stuff that you're here for.
The real question.
Cool. So yeah, like I said, we asked around. We got a whole bunch of questions that people want to ask, and some of them are questions that we regularly get asked by every developer we speak to. So it's going to be good, hopefully. If any of you pitch to us in the future, like, you won't ask these questions because you're already going to know. So yeah, we'll just jump straight in. What we got here. So the first one is, when should you consider self-publishing over third-party publishing? Oof. Who wants to take that one?
I'm happy to jump on that one, unless you want to, Lauren.
No, I'm interested in see what you have to say.
Yeah. I have strong opinions. I know, like, we, the three of us coming from more of like a publishing background, I'm to some degree very critical of publishing. To some degree, not saying we're all irrelevant. I think publishers are very important in particular cases. But with the evolution of the industry and how things have been panning out over the last couple of years, seeing not only funds popping up, but also these publishers for hire, to some degree, as I like to describe them, I think it's becoming more and more opportunities available to developers that they should really consider. I try to basically simplify things between, hey, there's funds, and you either need funding or you need the services. And if you are in a situation where you need both, perfect. A publisher might be like the perfect fit for you because typically they can supply both sides. If it's just one of the two things that you're in need for, then oftentimes there's pretty viable alternatives out there. Like, for me, a funding opportunity that would be available if you can do or want to handle the services yourself is something like Kowloon Knights, where you just get some project-based funding if there's a match and end up in that kind of relationship. Or if you have the funds available but need someone to handle the publishing services for you, then there's really cool folks like Future Friends in the UK or Pop Agenda in the US. And I think that's going to become more and more viable these days, especially since platforms are now investing more and more in like smaller indie titles for Game Pass and Apple Arcade. I'm curious to see how that will change the landscape a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think everything you said there is probably like the most important thing to take away from a question like that. But I guess one thing I was thinking is that, like, we have like an inbox where devs can just send us their pitch and materials, and we take a look over that when we can, because we get a lot. And I would say like probably 90%, maybe more, probably aren't a right fit for any kind of publishing because maybe people don't understand like what the outcome of a publishing deal is going to be. So that's going to be like a revenue split with the publisher for their services and for like the resources that they deliver to you throughout like the development process. So obviously some teams aren't interested in development funds, like you said, which you can go to like Kowloon or Wings or wherever. But like at the end of it, if you're kind of thinking like, you know, I'm not prepared to be like looking at splitting the funds of this like project that are generated by like the revenue, you know, is it going to be worth it in the end? Because everyone has to recoup their fair share of the work that they've put in. And you know, I know most publishers, it's their aim to put the devs on the best foot going forward so they can invest back in their own team and so that they can continue to make cool games, continue to support the indie scene, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of it, if it's like, if you're like a tiny team with like 2 or 3 people, perhaps like you say, you can look at something where at the end you're not going to be kind of giving away part of your investment in your own company to a publisher, which they would need to recoup based on the investment they made in the first place. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but it's just I just started talking and I didn't stop.
No, well, I'm not the person to ask. It makes perfect sense to me. Of course it does. But you've just made me think about one more question, actually. Do either of you scale the percentage of your recoup dependent on the services that the dev team takes? Because say one that went to film school and they're really good at making trailers, like that's a marketing task that doesn't get done by the publisher. And I mean, trailers are quite expensive if you break the budget down. But do you start taking points off? Like, assuming you start at 70-30, like, do you start moving towards smaller cuts? Or is it just like, nope, that's the deal?
Yeah, for us, it's like, no, it's I suppose, a bespoke agreement between each development team, not necessarily based on like a checklist of what they need from us and what they can already do themselves, but based on like the projections for the project, you know, market research, kind of like all of that kind of stuff, like depending on, because the team might be able to do everything themselves except say like console submission, but the you know, the reach of the game isn't expected to be as huge as a team that might perhaps need us to do everything, and that doesn't influence on what the revenue share would be. It's just an agreement every single time that is set up for that particular team for that particular game, because no 2 games from the same team might even be the same as well.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty similar for us. Typically, we don't have like a take it or leave it deal. It's a deal that we put on the table and then talk about. It very much depends on what kind of funding is needed, what kind of services are needed overall, what our involvement will be like, and then we negotiate what works out for best for both sides. Sometimes, obviously, that means we can't come to an agreement and you part ways, but I think that's also part of the standard process.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that's a really good point for people watching to take away. Like the first contract you get, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's always up for negotiation. The whole point of the contract, the negotiation process is each side wants to get as much as they can. So the negotiation is a compromise in the middle. So yeah, number one thing, first contract you get, if there's stuff you don't like, you know, sure, definitely push back on it. So fellow traveler, we sit kind of right in between both of you. Like we have a couple of templates for situations, and then afterwards we slide things around depending on what we have to do. In short, publishers are nice.
Most of them.
Yeah, most of us. Yeah.
Do your best.
Yeah. I'm curious, since we've been talking a little bit about services, what would you say if you're like, either you're working as part of the development team or you've just as sort of a point of advice, how should a team self-reflect and figure out internally what kind of services or skills they might not yet have acquired and need from a publisher?
Ooh.
Sorry for just throwing that out.
I think that's really hard because you don't know what you don't have,
Yeah,
or you don't know
yeah.
what you don't know. And I think, like what you said before, that is totally part of the process of like when the contract, not even necessarily as far along as a contract, really. Like you probably will have like 10 or 20 calls between a publisher and a studio before anything is even signed, because, you know, these are potentially arrangements that are going to be your working relationships for the next couple of years. And like, and you need to make sure everything is comfortable and everything is cool. And I know that's a completely separate point, but like, the stuff that you can't do that the publisher is experienced in knowing that will be needed will kind of come up in those conversations, I think, because it would be pretty bad if it didn't, and that would suck. So yeah, I think it's like yeah, how do you know what you don't know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And it's definitely part of our due diligence process. So we have a questionnaire that we send out that is semi-open ended, but like it's enough like to give me the answers that I need. Um, and because we're so small, and it could be really bad, but I need to assess not just the team capabilities, but like what my capacity is, because you know, because I do the production function for Fellow Traveler, some teams have their own producer, so it's like, okay, great, there's all this bunch of stuff that I won't have to do. Whereas like if there's a team of 3 and like there's no producer, it's like, oh man, like effectively, and I don't like doing this, but like I have to like embed with them and do a lot of their
That's
production
weird.
work. Yeah, right. And then you know, multiply that by like, you know, 6-7 games a year, like that's a lot of work. So yeah, good question, Chris. I can't think of a way you could work it out.
Due
Basically,
diligence
what I'm
is
saying,
really important though. Like, and I think that's really good that you raised that, Des, because we have like several different types of due diligence forms about the studio themselves, about D&I, and about like the game, and about the setup, and about their production processes and stuff like that. And it will be, I think, during that kind of thing, it becomes very apparent then, like, you know, whether they can do that or not, and then that gives us an idea of how we can help as well, and whether that is embedding.
Yeah.
yeah, the reason I brought up the question, I've always, or not always, but oftentimes find developers are a little bit too scared to sort of second guess a publisher, or at least what the general terms that they're talking about. Like, topic marketing. Marketing can mean so much. If a publisher is doing marketing for you, what does that even include? What can be, how is that going to be handled? It's going to be run through an external agency? Is it handled internally, or sort of a hybrid model? I think it's just good to point out that it's always worthwhile asking questions. Typically, if the publisher is not willing to answer any questions, might be a red flag you want to look out for. And alternatively, just talking to developers that have previously worked with those publishers is so valuable, and still oftentimes sort of not really frowned upon, but I feel people are a little bit scared from reaching out and just having that honest conversation.
That's a great point, because I mean, even I do it. Like, I do it the other way around. Like, you know, if a team comes to us with game 2 or game 3, I'm like, listen, yeah, the game sold loads, you made loads of money, but are they a pain in the ass to work with? Because I'm old and I don't have a lot of time dealing with assholes. So, like, just give me the skinny. And even stuff like that, like the bits where they're like, okay, they're really strong at doing this, but they're not great at doing that. So, you know, either make sure they hire it themselves or just pay attention to it. Oh man, yeah, referrals are great. Like, you always get to ask people questions. Yeah, man, that's a great point. Great point.
All right, let's see. We talked a little bit about the whole publisher model, or I'd mentioned like Kowloon, Pop Agenda. Within the publishing space, I think question that was asked in preparation is, what kind of publishers are there out there? Not everyone is the 70-30 kind of deal that does everything. Such a wild range.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm very equipped to answer this question myself, having like, this is maybe I'm maybe I shouldn't admit this because it makes me underqualified to be on this panel. But I previously worked at indie studios, so as like on the developer side, and we only kind of do our thing our way here. So I'm really interested to learn more about this question from you guys.
I mean, yeah, I can start with this. Yeah, like so. I mean, yeah, yes, they are different kind of publishers. Oh man, so and also there's different types of I guess companies saying they're publishers, which we probably shouldn't get into, but I tend to split them up in different ways. So I split them up by budget, right? So you've got your AAA, mega companies that kind of do publishing and development themselves. Then you've got your AA, which are kind of been around for a while, good at making money. I'd probably, in fact, let me quantify this. So AAA, EA, Activision, all those people. AA, I'd probably put your Team 17s in there. You're probably sold out and stuff like that. And obviously, I'm being very Europe based. And then after that, like I'd put Collective in this kind of like AAA spin-off. Like you're definitely indie focused, but you can tap into big Square Enix's resources, like whenever you want. I'm very envious because that's awesome. And then after that, yeah, you've got the indie range, which I'd probably, Fellow Traveler is firmly in, but oh man, there's loads of us down here, like all of us here, Raw Fury, No More Robots, like just a whole wide range. But and then after that, you can split up by platform. So some of us only do console, PC, some only do mobile, some do all of them. And then even again, there's a third slice where we go back what we were talking about earlier. It's where we got the full service people, we got the minimal service people, and then you got something in between. It is not super easy. And just to underline that, I found a spreadsheet by Alan, I forget his surname.
Alan Dang.
Yeah. There's like 220 publishers on there, and I haven't heard of at least 70 of them. So it's there's a lot.
I remember seeing a spreadsheet like a couple months ago from a agency that they were like collecting and putting out there for developers to take a look at, and there were about 1,500 publishers on that list. It's like, wow, okay, I've heard of maybe 200 of those. There's the regional publishers are also such a thing that oftentimes gets overlooked entirely until you're in a position where you're dealing with regional publishers for tapping into Southeast Asia, for example, or Latin America or Africa now. And it's impressive that the wild range of even developers turned publishers as ourselves, or these triple-I companies, as I like to call them. It's tough. It's tough out there to find the right partners, and you really have to sort of do your research when figuring out who you want to pitch to, who might be just in an entirely different field of range.
Just to follow up on your mention there about regional partners. So we got a question down here. It's like, so what is it possible to work with multiple publishers at the same time? And I guess under what conditions would you or would you not do that?
I mean, I think it is technically. I mean, not even technically, it just is. Like for us, we do, like you mentioned, console and PC. So if a team were looking to take their game to mobile or VR, for example, we'd be happy to let them court another publisher, as it were, to achieve their goals of releasing on all of the platforms that they liked. So yeah, I think that's a pretty decent instance. Or physical, for example, we only do digital, so you can go to like a limited run or whoever to look to release physically if you wanted to on your title as well.
Oh, that's the perfect opportunity to plug something. It's not an ad, I promise. We just got these the other day, and we worked with Super Rare, so they also do physical.
Oh, Super Rare as well,
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Shiny.
Had to happen. Sorry, no shame.
That's excellent, Laura. Thanks for that. And I'd definitely say regionally as well. So, I mean, exception being AAA. Like anyone below that level, I'd be hard pushed to say that they've got truly like global reach. I mean, definitely for us, we're fine in the West, but in Japan and Asia, we definitely partner with somebody else because. So if in those territories you need boots on the ground and with relationships that they can leverage, which we just don't have. So yeah, any devs that we speak to, like I'm always just like, well, taking my fellow traveler hat off for a second. Yeah, any dev that I meet traveling back when that was a thing, I would say always be careful like about who gets what rights. And like we said before, speak to their other devs and be like, how did they perform in these regions? And if they performed badly, then carve that out of the contract and give that to somebody else.
Yeah, fully agree. One thing that I'm always curious about, and I don't really have an opinion because it can go both ways, is this idea of, if you know from the get-go, you want to have a partner, let's say for mainland China overall, is this idea of do I let my main publisher handle sort of that co-publishing, or do I go that separate route and actually carve it out of the contract? Because that also means more admin stuff for you on your end. Otherwise, that would be already handled through that partner. Again, I don't really have an opinion about that. We in the past have usually handled, or not in the past, actively as well, handled those sort of we're the middleman in that kind of relationship. But I see stuff like that popping up more and more, where developers specifically want a PC and console rights publisher in the Western Hemisphere, and then sort of split up those other rights for other platforms, other regions between sometimes multiple partners. And that can go very well with your, as you mentioned, like the boots on the ground.
I think for me, it would be down to the experience level. And that's both sides, right? Like if I was just starting out in video games, I'd go and get a job. I wouldn't start up my own indie company. But if you don't take that advice, yeah, like just be honest with yourselves, right? Like if there's 3 of you or 4 of you, like you're not going to be able to handle 2 separate publishing deals. So you should probably go via the one partner, get them to deal with it. But again, it's in the contract stage, right? Like if you strongly want to release your game in a territory and the publisher you're dealing with doesn't want to, I mean, you're kind of stuck, right? Like, if they don't want to, then make sure it's not in the contract, so you have the option of doing it yourself later. Like, don't let them take global rights and then still not do the work. But yeah, no, yeah, you're right, Chris. It's definitely a very broad answer. But yeah. Oh man. Okay, what we got? Oof.
I guess.
All right.
I was going to say, like, to pick up on that, because that was something I was kind of going to mention, which is like often a lot of things, like as nice as the publisher and developer agreement can be, and as friendly as everyone is, you really, really, really need to have everything down in writing, because ultimately it's about who owns what and who is getting what. And when money is involved, you never know, like, when the business interest of the publisher is going to change or whether your interest as a developer is going to change. So here's like, how would you spot red flags in publishers? So I think as just a jumping off point, like, what is a red flag for when you're talking to a publisher for you guys?
My number one red flag is if you ask them to explain their modeling about how you recoup, like when you're going to get the money and stuff, and they refuse to do that. Like, that's my number one. I'm like, okay, well, bye then. Like, there's no reason for you not to explain to me how the distribution of money is going to happen, unless you're doing something shady. So yeah, that's my number one red flag.
Yeah, I think I fully agree to that. Secrecy overall, I understand there's certain business practices, but within the games industry, we're at the point where folks talk to each other. There's really no reason to keep real concrete secrets between business partners, and actively trying to block the flow of information, even in the early contract stages, where it's really tough to get your answers. But anything you might want to know and understand is tricky. Like, hey, do you work with external QA or internal QA? And if it's like a vague, well, trust us, we handle stuff. Generally, the term "trust us" is always a red flag. Like, it needs to be in writing, otherwise you don't know these people.
Say that out loud.
Yeah, and that, to be fair, like, that goes both ways. If I have a pitch deck in front of me and it's not explained to me how a development team that, let's say, made a prototype over, it's a little bit exaggerating here, but over 18 months and plans on finishing up the game in 6. I have some questions about that, and it's, trust us, once we have the money, it'll be fine. Well, I'm not going to sign that game. It goes both ways. Slightly exaggerating, but we've seen things.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I love
that.
How about you, Lauren? What's your red flag?
Red flag. I don't know. We've been so lucky, like in the time that like I've been working kind of on biz dev stuff, is that everyone's like really. I guess it's because of maybe experiences like that previously. By the time studios get to us, they often kind of know what they want to know, and we have like a sheet of information to prepare. I would say lawyer up is like what I would suggest when you're entering into a contract situation, because like you need to protect yourself, even if you're working with like a really like from a small team to like a huge corporation like Square, for example. Like make sure you have experienced people to look over those contracts before you sign anything, to make sure you're getting the deal that you think you're getting. Legal language is complicated, and contracts can be many pages long and very boring, and like you don't want anything to slip by you. Like, yeah, protect yourself. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, this is where we get sort of like super cynical, but it's a business, right? And these publishers deploying these types of money, like they want to make sure they get that money back, and plus, investment and return on investment. I mean, I can only speak for us. Like, we don't do it, but like, there's some clauses where, depending on how the agreement is terminated, like IP gets transferred, which obviously is terrible, because instead of both of you having nothing, like it's only you that has nothing. And then I guess like caps on expenditure. So a little bit what you're saying earlier, Chris, about publishers need to be upfront about like the marketing they're going to do, like what are the activities, and as a dev you need to be comfortable that those activities are the right activities. Like we're going to put 20 grand into Facebook ads, and you could be like, oh, I don't think our audience is on Facebook, so that'd be a waste of money. And even the amount is too high, right? Like you need to have caps in there. So but this is where the flexibility comes in. Let the publishers do their job, but like have caps that say, okay, if you're going to spend more than $5,000 on something, we need to approve it as the devs. It's the right thing to do. But yeah, and this is what the lawyer will save you. Like they're a cost, and when you're a startup, like they're a significant cost, but compared to the cost at the other end, like they'll save you bundles of cash and headache and heartache. So
I think kind of related to this is a very hyper specific thing that I'm about to say, and many studios who haven't signed publishing deals might not be even familiar with this yet. But in terms of when you're working on a project, or in advance of that, when you deliver your list of for example milestones to your publisher, be as specific as you possibly can with what you are going to deliver, because if you are vague, it could be used against you, basically, because then it's easy for someone on either side to say this was not delivered, this was not to the standard expected. If the standards aren't defined and what you're supposed to be delivering is not defined, it's like you say, Des, it's cynical, but like you need to protect yourself by knowing exactly 100% what it is that is agreed between the two parties, because it is essentially a business transaction. And if you're just kind of like, well, we're not quite sure about what we're going to be delivering on this day, so we'll just put it in general language, it's like it just pays so much to be very specific and think about these really boring things in advance, but it helps everyone as well. And producers love it when you're specific, because then they know exactly what to expect.
Yeah. It turns a 10-minute job, it stops a 10-minute job becoming like a half-hour job. It's good. Yeah, I love it.
Talk a little bit about the whole process of pitching or initial contacts. I know for some developers, the whole reaching out process or preparing a pitch deck is super scary, which is understandable. It's a business thing that some people don't. Some people just want to make a game and not figure out how to fund it or how to lawyer up and have those conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, a question generally for the two of you. Do you at Fellow Traveler and Square Enix Collective actively also reach out to developers, or do you wait for folks to submit their games to through websites or forums, etc.?
So I don't know if it's happened with us three yet, but so what a bit for the audience is like, obviously we all generally talk to each other because we're all generally nice people, right?
Generally.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the week it is for me. Yeah, no, seriously. I won't speak for myself. So we always looking. We love video games, right? So if we see stuff on Twitter or YouTube or anywhere we're consuming media, we'd be like, oh, okay, cool. It's always gonna be like, I wonder if they got a publisher yet. That'd be a great fit for our label. But the problem is, I know for a fact that I'm not the only one who saw that thing. So it does become a little bit of a race. Like, okay, quick, let's get this. And it's happened to a couple of other publishers that I've worked at before, where you'd be walking around an event and you see a developer that you've been speaking to who's gone quiet on you, and then they're on someone's stand. You'd be like, I knew it was you. So no, absolutely, we do reach out because you know, you never know when you're going to miss an opportunity like that. I think for curation purposes, like obviously we're going to reach out for stuff that we think is going to be a good fit for us. Whereas the pitches that come in, I mean, they fall in two camps, right? One's done research and one hasn't. Like you'd never pitch to us a VR game, but we still get them in our bucket because we've done them once and never again. And then you wouldn't pitch us a mobile only game, but we still get those pitches for those.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for those who might wonder whether it helps or not, like we're always looking at stuff like Screenshot Saturday. Sorry, Nelly said something bad there. On Twitter, we're always kind of like on socials looking at dev studios and kind of like just scouting the next thing, and we all talk to each other as well. So if someone hasn't pitched to us and has pitched to, for example, like of course we're probably more talking about like the European studios, or in particular some of the UK studios as well, like if another publisher has received a pitch and it's not a fit for them for various reasons, if they get permission from that studio, they'll often share that around and say, hey, this team is really great, wonder if this is something that would be a fit for you. And we get stuff that way, and then that's kind of us approaching them because they didn't come to us. But yeah, definitely like always post on Screenshot Saturday. I love it. Love GIFs every day.
It's incredible how, I mean, in 2020, I feel like every other game was discovered on Twitter that people end up signing or at least engaging in conversations with. I know that everyone that we've talked, close to everyone that we've talked to, that we actively reach out to, was somehow related to Twitter or saw their game listed somewhere, and then we learned more about their game on Twitter. It's just such a phenomenal platform.
Yeah. So I know Callum Underwood, Robot Teddy, like some of the games he signed, like so he shared some of the messages that he's just sent devs, and literally just been like, "Hey, can I publish your game?" And it's like,
Callum.
Yeah, right. It's fantastic. But then 6 months later, legal talks, all that stuff. Then it goes. But reaching out's fine.
What you should be a little bit cautious about is these obviously mail merger emails. We get them a lot from often regional publishers or mobile publishers, where folks reach out to us. They obviously have no idea who we are, that we are also somewhat of a co-publisher, but it's just a copy paste. Hey, those awesome guys studio, we saw your games, no mention of any game or whatsoever. It's just, we saw your games, they look interesting. Are you looking for a partner in region XYZ? It's like, come on, like, or hey there, we no customization whatsoever. And it's like, oh, dude, why not put in some effort to at least pretend like you know who you're reaching out to?
One of the interesting things that's kind of related to that is we get so many emails in our inbox from people asking to make games of Square Enix IP. So it's, I don't know if you guys get this, but it's like, oh my gosh, I had a really good idea for a oh my gosh, what's it called? The vampire game that was like really popular.
Legacy of Kain.
Legacy of Kain's like, just bring, like, it would be really awesome if you brought back Legacy of Kain in like XYZ, and I have a really good idea for that. Let's set up a call. And we're like,
so we haven't asked any public questions. I do want to jump on a couple of these.
okay.
Yeah, 2, 3,
Fine.
5. Yeah, okay, good.
We'll make a speed round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these are long ones. Let me pick the shortest one would be okay. What kind of details do you expect to see? What kind of financial details do you expect to see in a pitch?
Ideally, initial email with a pitch deck. It's enough for me to know how much funding is needed, and just funding amount and timeline of development. That's good. Afterwards, I'll definitely want to see a spreadsheet breakdown of this is how much how much money we're going to spend when, roughly on what. But initially, funding amount, then I can easily say, hey, this is $2 million. Yeah, that's a no from us. It's $200,000. Hey, let's talk.
Cool. Anything to add, Lauren?
No, that's great.
No? Okay, cool. What's another one? Okay. Have you ever seen an amazing game? And what's it? One second. And you liked the game, but the team or the people behind it put you off?
I haven't personally, but that would be a huge deal if the team did not represent our values, or if we didn't trust the team to deliver because they didn't have a track record of delivery. We had heard perhaps from other publishers, or they had a bad reputation, or we got a bad feeling about them and they didn't answer our due diligence correctly. That wouldn't work for us. We have to be all in on the team and the project as kind of like equal kind of importance, I suppose.
Cool.
Yeah, we're all working games. We want to work with people that we enjoy working with. It's not finance where you, at the end of the day, this is generalizing, of course, care about money.
Yeah.
Only.
What we got here? So, what do you look for in a game? Commercial viability, game feel, or something else? That all of the above.
Both.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Good. Do you feel indies? Okay. Do you feel indie is constantly being pushed towards AA and taking a lot from AAA? Doesn't this slowly deteriorate what indie means?
So, indie doesn't mean shit anymore. Sorry for swearing.
Yeah, that's good.
The term indie, like, sure, Destiny 2 is an indie title at this point, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think, has a different definition of indie. And yes, sure, that term is absolutely watered down at this point. So I guess I agree to some point with the question.
Because you can't even assign like a monetary value to the term of indie or a studio size, because we work with teams of 2 on a X amount of budget, but we also work with teams of 60 on £8 million budget, and they're still an indie team that, you know, they still own their own IP, they still run themselves, it's still indie, but would it be indie by someone else's margin? Like, who knows?
Not to labor the point, but like in the discussions like I always have, it's like independent covers like all the other stuff, and then indie, like I think when people speak indie, they're like, oh yeah, you know, like kind of almost like punk music, you know, just, you know, doing their own thing. But personally for me, like independent means any decision I make, I don't answer to anyone else. So like I could go to someone and tell them to, and I can tell them to piss off, and I won't get told off. Like if the buck stops with me, that's what independence means for me. Because like if you talk about all the different deals you can do, like there's some deals that you can make that really don't make you independent anymore. Like, you know, once you go past that 2 million range, you know, you're kind of tied with whoever you're working with for a long time, even for game 2. So like, yeah. You're on
You
the
could
hook for
even
that.
state the same thing for working with the platform at this point. Like if you sign a deal that's worth X million or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you rely on that for production, and you have like an exclusivity deal, is that really indie anymore? It's very broad. I know like Tencent has indie development labels, which again, like I love some of the projects that are coming out there. But what's indie about that? It's the spirit at the end of the day.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we're done. All right, cool. So just quickly, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been awesome. It's great to see you. Because we don't get to see each other.
We clearly need to have more chats, don't we? Because we've got a lot to say.
Yeah. Just quickly, where's the best place for people to find you online if they want to follow up? Lauren.
Yeah, you can message me on Twitter. My Twitter username is LaurenHNTR, LAURENHNTR.
Chris.
Twitter as well, Chris Wulf _ because there's a second Chris Wulf out there, and I'll find him one day and get that.
And if you want to get hold of me, it's Twitter again. That's the fastest way. And I am kid_Desimo. Awesome. Well, hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for having us, and look forward to Ben Andek, who's coming up next.